Picture this, a frosty March evening in 2025, the lights flickering across the northern United States, New York, Vermont, Michigan, places where families have long taken cheap, clean Canadian hydropower for granted. For generations, Canada has been America's quiet giant, its most reliable energy lifeline, its biggest trading partner, and the invisible glue holding North America's economic engine together. Think of it as the dependable neighbor who always shovels your driveway without asking. But that cozy image is shattering fast. Donald Trump's freshly minted 25% tariffs on Canadian goods have lit a fuse, and Canada's not just mad, it's ready to hit back with a vengeance. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, a burly figure with a grin that could charm a grizzly, dropped a bombshell on March 2, 2025. If Trump keeps pushing these unfair tariffs, we'll cut off electricity exports to the U.S., and I'll do it with a smile on my face. Suddenly, the idea of Canada plunging its southern neighbor into darkness isn't a far-fetched thriller plot, it's a real threat. Humming through the headlines, the roots of the rift, tariffs and tangled ties. This isn't just about power lines, it's personal, political, and packed with stakes higher than a Rocky Mountain peak. Trump's tariffs, rolled out in early 2025, slapped 25 to 30% duties on Canadian steel, aluminum, and agricultural goods. Think wheat fields, lumber mills, and the shiny stuff that builds skyscrapers. A month ago, he paused these levies after Canada and Mexico howled in protest, but the reprieve didn't last. Trump, ever the showman, sees Canada not as the buddy who's had America's back since the days of maple syrup and moonshine, but as another freeloader in his America First crusade. Some whisper it's personal. Failed Trump-branded hotels in Toronto and Vancouver still sting. And his frosty handshake with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at a 2019 G7 summit, followed by a dishonest and weak jab, hasn't helped. Whatever the spark, the tariffs have reignited a trade war that's turning allies into adversaries. Canada's not sitting quiet. On March 3, a source close to Trudeau, imagine a bespectacled aide hunched over a snow-dusted desk in Ottawa, leaked a chilling hint. The PM's weighing all options. Electricity's just the start. The US shouldn't test us. This isn't empty bravado. In 2024, Canada exported 65 terawatt-hours of electricity, enough juice to light up millions of homes, 90% of it flowing south to the US. That's no small plug to pull. States like New York and Vermont lean hard on Quebec's roaring hydroelectric dams, while Ontario's grid keeps Michigan's factories humming. Cut that off, and you're not just talking higher bills, you're risking blackouts in the dead of winter. Let's zoom in on the numbers, because they're jaw-dropping. In 2023, the US shelled out $2.3 billion for Canadian electricity, clean, cheap hydropower that keeps northeastern lights on and midwestern industries churning. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Canada pumps 1.4 million barrels of crude oil daily into the US, accounting for 62% of America's oil imports in 2023. Refineries in Ohio and Illinois turn that black gold into gasoline and jet fuel. Then there's natural gas, nickel, and steel, raw materials that fuel everything from Detroit's car plants to Silicon Valley's tech dreams. For 6 decades, 35 major transmission lines and 70 oil and gas pipelines have stitched the two nations into the world's tightest energy embrace. A $112 billion dance of volts and barrels in 2021 alone. Now, Canada's flexing that muscle. Ford's not alone in his defiance. Trudeau's been simmering since February 1, when he thundered from a podium, "These tariffs are unacceptable. Our closest friend, the US, must back off, or we'll retaliate across sectors." Picture him, sleeves rolled up, channeling the spirit of hockey and forces ready to drop the gloves. Ontario's threat to turn off the lights isn't a solo act, it's part of a broader playbook. Ford's even teased cutting off nickel and steel, whispering to industry pals, "If they choke our farmers, we'll starve their factories." It's a high-stakes poker game, and Canada's got a royal flush of resources up its sleeve. Over in Washington, Trump's camp isn't blinking. On March 3, a White House spokesperson, flanked by American flags, shot back. "Canada's our ally, sure, but these tariffs are about national security and fair trade. We're watching their threats, but we won't budge." Trump's set to storm Congress on March 4, 2025, with a speech insiders say will roar, "Tariffs have reborn American industry. We bow to no one." Reports claim he's shrugging off advisors who warn of Midwest power shortages, betting instead on his gut. Tariffs are our best weapon. He's even upping the ante, promising reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd against any country daring to tax U.S. goods. It's classic Trump, brash, unyielding, and ready to roll the dice. But can Canada actually pull this off? The grids are a tangled web. Decades of engineers in hard hats and policymakers in suits have fused the two nations' energy fates. You can't just flip a switch, says one analyst, sipping coffee in a Toronto diner. But they could throttle it, reduce dam flows, tweak exports. That's enough to make Americans sweat. Imagine a dimmer switch on the Great Lakes Power, leaving families scrambling for candles and factories idling in the dark. If Canada plays its card, the US feels the heat first. Maine could see energy costs spike by $200 million a year. Vermont's deal with Hydro-Quebec, 25% of its power through 2038, could collapse, leaving quaint towns shivering. New York's megawatt pact with Ontario, set to run until 2030, might unravel, jacking up bills in a city that never sleeps. Midwest refineries, guzzling Canadian oil, could stall, sending gas prices soaring just as summer road trips loom. And don't forget the voters. Trump's base might cheer, America first, until their wallets groan under pricier power and groceries. Canada's not unscathed, though. That $2.30 to $5 billion in electricity sales props up Ontario and Quebec's economies, losing its stings. Exports of steel and nickel to US plants employ thousands north of the border. A full cutoff risks a self-inflicted wound. It's diplomatic blackmail, one economist quips, puffing a pipe in a wood-paneled office. Canada's betting Trump blinks before Ottawa bleeds out. History backs this. Energy's a brutal bargaining chip, from OPEC's 1970s oil shocks to Russia's gas games in Europe. Ford knows it, grinning as he repeats on March 6, "I'll do it with a smile." Zoom out, and it's not just Canada. Mexico, also slapped with Trump's tariffs, could wield its own weapons. Think avocados, auto parts, and tequila. Together, these neighbors supplied 85% of US trade in 2023. Trump's long grumbled about NAFTA. Now, his 2025 tariff barrage might shred it entirely. Supply chains could snap, prices balloon, and North America's economic harmony dissolve into a three-way brawl. There are no winners in trade wars, economists chant, but Trump insists, they're easy to win. Canada's reply? We'll pay a price, but you'll pay more. Could Canada really plunge the US into darkness? Not overnight. The grids are too entwined, and Ottawa's federal government would need to green-light Ford's bravado. But even a partial squeeze, halving exports, say, could jolt American nerves. Picture a late-night news ticker, Canadian dams slow, Northeast dims. Short-term chaos might force Trump to the table, or it could harden his resolve, tariff walls climbing higher. Some see a compromise looming, cooler heads whispering in both capitals, but the clock's ticking. March 11, 2025, and the air's thick with tension. Imagine a Vermont farmer, breath fogging in a chilly barn, muttering, "Why's my bill doubling?" Or a Detroit assembly worker, laid off as nickel dries up, cursing both Trump and Trudeau. Across the border, a Quebec dam operator shrugs, "We'll survive, but will they?" This isn't just geopolitics, it's people's lives flickering in the balance. Will Trump back off, or will Canada's lights-out gambit spark a continental crisis? Eyes are glued to Ottawa and Washington, waiting for the next move in this electrifying drama. What's your bet? Bluff, blackout, or back down? Drop your thoughts below, and let's unravel this tangle together.